Every Gentile is certainly not forbidden. I get into these discussions sometimes and I try to steer things away from about like, are you able to or are you not able to, and more into the direction of what does that even mean? Because I think most of the Gentile non-Jews that I interact with about these things, their idea of keeping, especially with the notions that they get from maybe the Ger movement or the Noahide movements, is that they just rest and they kind of pick and choose what they want to do, and they don't have any real understanding on what the 39 malachas are. So I don't know. I feel like somehow have to help pull them out of that fantasy.
I don't endorse the Ger movement. I think it's a very destructive movement. And I'm not here telling you that Gentiles must keep Shabbat. I'm just saying that anyone who says that it's clear cut that they shouldn't keep Shabbat hasn't researched the issue. The truth is, anyone who's come to the realization that Torah is true and that Moses actually received that revelation from God, that Klal Yisrael on Har Sinai received that revelation from God, should not in some way be sitting on a fence. They should just become Israel by saying Nasiv and Ishma, by accepting these commandments upon themselves. Stam. The notion of people sitting on a fence when they know the Torah is true is a new one. The halakha is clear that anyone who breaks any of the 7 laws with one witness without a pre-warning is put to death. Even someone who steals something worth less than a sheva pruta, which is a Roman coin, is put to death. Why would anyone in their right mind would want to choose this for a lifestyle? Almost any rabbi who pushes the Noahide or Ger movement nowadays does so to make money, because he doesn't believe in what he's teaching, because it's not a monolithic idea. It's not an absolute idea in Judaism. In other words, some rabbis teach that a Gentile who keeps the 7 laws because they were given to Moshe Rabbeinu and Har Sinai gets a place in the world to come. Some teach they don't. So, by the simple fact that it's not unanimous, especially on such an important metaphysical issue like the destination of your soul, why would you want to teach it as an alternative to serious religions like Christianity and Islam? The only reason you'd want to do it is to make money.
I mean, I can't agree with that. I mean, even if you want to be cynical about it, you could say that it's a nice way of telling a Gentile where to go instead of telling them to go to hell.
So where should they go then? There's no Noahide establishment outside of Facebook. There's no place for them to pray. There's no place for their children to congregate or a place to meet a potential spouse. In other words, what they do is that they destroy someone's faith and they don't give that person a viable alternative to the faith they destroyed. Life's very short. You take someone who has friends, who has family, who belongs to some type of monotheistic religion, whether it's Christianity or Islam, and you take that away from them. And in return, what do you give them? I'll tell you, the vast majority of people who become Noahides, if they don't end up converting to Judaism, will end up adopting some Far Eastern religion or becoming atheist. And I've seen it many, many times. I tell people that for the sake of their children, if they're not going to convert to Judaism, don't take your kids out of the Messianic movement. At least they have some structure. At least they have someone to marry. At least they have a place to congregate. If you take that away from them, your kids are going to go off. They're going to drop religion completely. And I've seen it over and over again. Conversion in the past has never needed the Noahide movement as a stepping stone. The Noahide movement is really less than 30 years old as a mainstream option. I'm not talking about, Vendo Jones way back when nobody knew about it. In other words, why do we need it now? They didn't need it back then. Throughout Jewish history, there has never been a Noahide movement. And the God-fearers were not Noahides. God-fearers were people who kept all of Torah, who identified in every way with Israel, with the exception that they didn't circumcise themselves for whatever reason, either political pressure or their status in the Roman community. But this idea of people remaining Gentiles when they have the ability to become Jewish. Now, okay, fine. I know conversions, especially Orthodox conversions, are hard to come by nowadays. So just live as a Gentile who's in transition. I mean, for sure, you'd be considered at least in the covenant, because conversion nowadays is really a political process. You're converting into the physical people of Israel. It has nothing to do with some relationship with God. One enters the covenant with God the same way Israel entered the covenant with God on Mount Sinai, by accepting the commandments upon themselves. Now, conversion as it exists today is rabbinic. Nowhere in the Torah does it say that you have to go to a mikveh to convert. Nowhere does it say that you have to bring a korban to convert. Now, circumcision is a sign of the covenant. It says in Isaiah, I believe Isaiah 56, it says, let the Nochri not think that I would exclude him from my covenant when he circumcised himself, like when he keeps the Sabbath. In other words, only because you happen to be from Gentile stock and you haven't had the ability to go through a formal conversion process does not mean that you're not in a covenant with God. But the problem is semantics. The word Jew means nothing. The word Jew really, really doesn't appear in Torah, especially to signify someone in some sort of covenant. The proper term is being in a covenant with God. Like nowadays, someone could be halachically Jewish, i.e. born from a Jewish mother, and not be in a covenant with God. And like someone could be in a covenant with God and not technically be halachically Jewish. So we have to in some way put the rabbinic aside and not forget where our religion comes from, and that's Torah. So if the Hebrews on Mount Sinai, who might as well have had a Gentile status before accepting the Torah, accepted the Torah by just making a declaration to keep it, then what should stop you from doing it? And on top of that, why build a religion off what's called Midrash and Agadah, here, which is what the 7 laws are? Now, I believe in the 7 laws of Noah. The 7 laws of Noah are a big part of what Gentiles are expected to keep, or what personifies a Gentile in a Jewish society. But it's completely rabbinic. It was developed by the court to adjudicate Gentiles who are living in Jewish lands. But like anything that has a legal nature, eventually it gets mystified. So the rabbis created legends and tales around it, like that 6 laws were given to Adam Arishon and the 7th law given to Noach. Okay, there are many midrashim that attach themselves to laws, but people should not in some way walk around thinking that before the Torah was given, that the 7 laws existed like a standard, and that there was actually a yeshiva. I mean, it's another medrash that teaches it was a yeshiva, the yeshiva of Shemenever, that they taught these 7 laws. And I mean, if you read these books on this Ger movement, they really, if you think there is a commandment not to add to the Torah, I mean, these guys really add to the narrative in terms of teaching that Adam was given a scroll. I mean, basically, Adam was given the whole Torah, which I guess would contradict the whole notion, the yeshiva of Shemenever only teaching the 7 laws of Adam was giving the whole Torah and it was passed down orally. Midrashim constantly contradict themselves and are not meant to be taken literally. And this whole idea that a Gentile who keeps the 7 laws gets a share in the world to come is really just an opinion of the Rambam, quoting one opinion in the Talmud. Now, the vast majority of the rabbis in the Talmud did not believe Gentiles had a share in the world to come. And the Rambam actually contradicts himself. In Hilchos Tshuva, he says that a Gentile who keeps the 7 laws gets a share in the world to come. But then elsewhere, like in Surah chapter 14, he says that when someone comes to convert, while you're encouraging him, because unlike what people do today, with a halakha, is that you encourage someone who wants to convert, that you don't push them away. And then he quotes that pasuk in Hosea. It says that when Israel was young, I loved him and I drew him close with bonds of love. And he teaches that, so that how we're supposed to draw converts close to us. It says there that in a way to encourage the potential convert, we tell him that only Israelites, what he's converting to, only they get a share in the world to come. So it's not necessarily a contradiction, but the difference is that in Surah like he's quoting the halacha, because, I mean, he didn't make that up. He's quoting Yevamot 47. And in Hilchos Malachim, like he's giving his own devotional opinion that God has a place for Gentiles who reject idolatry and keep these laws. It's not a monolithic idea, and for sure, it's not enough to build your life around. If someone is serious about Judaism, just start keeping all the Torah. Start keeping all the Torah like God commanded you to keep it. This whole notion that only Jews were commanded to keep Torah is nonsense. Okay? Anyone who believes that the God of Israel is true and his commandments are true should keep them. Right? I mean, people shouldn't walk around saying, "Oh, well, I believe the Torah is true, but I'm just going to live by 7 laws." Right? It's so nonsensical.